Hi and Assalamualaikum and a very good day everyone. So we will continue with topic 5, which is chapter 24 from your maths textbook, which is flowering plants, structure and organization. So we have Dr. Nadia have explained earlier on 24.1. So I will continue on 24.2, which is organs of flowering plants. And then we will go on into 24.3, which is the organization and diversity of roots. And then we will go into stems and then leaf. Okay, so the first subtopic we'll go into is the 24.2, which is the organs of flowering plants. So flowering plants, the other name for it are the angiosperms. They are extremely diverse. So flowering plants, they have vegetative organs. What are vegetative organs? Which is all plant parts, except the reproductive structure. So vegetative organs are mostly concerned with growth and the nutrition. So a typical plant, if you can see on the right here, features three vegetative organs, which is the root, and then we have the stem, and then we have the leaf. So flowering plants possess a root and a shoot system. So this is the root system, and this is the shoot system here where the new leaves grows. So root system simply consists of the roots, and the shoot system consists of the stem and the leaf. So flowers, seeds and fruits are structures involved in the reproduction of plants. Okay, so next we go on into the stem and the leaf. So stems, so a shoot system composed of stem, branches and leaf, which is all this part here. So the stem is the main axis of a plant. It elongates and produces leaves. So a stem supports the leaves in a way that exposes each one to as much sunlight as possible. So in addition to that, the stem also transports materials between roots and leaf and produces new tissue. So at the end of a stem, so you can see there is a terminal bud. So the terminal bud contains an apical meristem and produces new leaves and other tissues during the initial primary growth of a plant. So this is a close-up picture of a terminal bud, which is this part here. So a terminal bud contains an apical meristem. So and produces new leaves and other tissue during primary growth. So lateral branches grow from the lateral bud. Okay, this part here. So leaves. Next we go on into leaves. What are leaves? It carries out photosynthesis. And we have foliage leaves, which is this part here, which is called foliage. Is broad and thin. And then we have the blade. And then we have the petiole, which is the stalk attaching the blade to the stem. Okay, so the flowering plants are divided into two groups depending on the number of cotyledons or seed leaves in the embryonic plant. So plants with the seed containing only one cotyledon are referred to as the monocotyledons or the monocots. And then the plants with seeds that contain two cotyledons are known as eudicotyledons or the eudicots, or another word for it are dicots. So cotyledons of eudicots supply nutrients for seedlings, but the cotyledon of monocots act as transfer tissue. And the nutrients are derived from the endosperm before the true leaves begin to photosynthesize. The vascular transport, which is the vascular tissue, is organized differently in both of the monocot and the eudicots. So in the monocot root, the vascular tissue occurs in a ring. So in the eudicot roots, the xylem, which transport water and materials and also minerals, are star-shaped, and the phloem, which transport the organic nutrient, is located between the point of the stars. So in a eudicot stem, the vascular bundles occur in a ring. So the monocot leaves have a parallel venation, while the eudicot leaf have a netted venation. Okay, we'll go into all this detail during our lab later. So flower parts. Okay, there's a difference between the flower parts of the monocot and also the eudicots. So monocots have their flower parts arranged in multiple of threes, whereas the eudicots have their flower parts arranged in a multiple of 4 or 5. Okay, so this figure shows the differences between the monocots and the eudicots. So if you can see here for the seed, there's only one cotyledon in the seed for monocot, while in the eudicots there are two cotyledons in the seed. Okay, we go on into the root. So the root, xylem and phloem in the monocot is arranged in a ring, while the root phloem between the arms of xylem the root of the phloem in the eudicots are between the arms of the xylem. So next we have the stem. If you see the monocot, the vascular bundles are scattered inside the stem, while in the eudicots, the vascular bundles are in a distinct ring. Okay, for the leaf, so the leaf veins form a parallel pattern in the monocot, while in the eudicots, the leaf veins form a net pattern. Okay, for the flower, okay, this is the most obvious part of the plant. The flower parts in threes and also multiple of three. You see here in the monocot, so this is like the petals, and under here we have the petals or the sepals that also come in three. So in eudicots, the flower parts are in 4 or 5. Okay, so that is the main difference, if you can tell just by looking at the plant. Okay, so the pollen for monocots are 1 pore or slit, and the eudicots are 3 pores or slit. Okay, so next we go on into the organization and diversity of roots. So the root system in the majority of plants is located underground. So the extensive root system of a plant anchors it into the soil, which gives the plant support and also absorbs the water and mineral. So the cylindrical shape of a root allows it to penetrate the soil as it grows and permits water to be absorbed from all sides. Okay, so if you can see here that the root cap contains the root apical meristem, which have 3 different zones, which is zone of cell division, zone of elongation, and then zone of maturation. So at the zone of cell division, this is the primary meristems area. And then we have the zone of elongation, which is cells that are lengthening and becoming more specialized. And then the last one, we have the zone of maturation, which are fully differentiated cells. Okay, so we go on into tissues of a eudicot root. So the first one, we have the epidermis, which is the outer layer of the root, which is this part here, the outer layer. It consists of only a single layer of cells. And then moving inward, next to the epidermis are the large thin wall parenchyma cells that make up the cortex. So this part here is composed of parenchyma cells and allows water and minerals movement. And then we go on into the inside a bit more, there is the endodermis. So the endodermis is the next single layer of cells between the cortex and the inner vascular cylinder. And then next we have the pericycle. Pericycle is the first layer of cells within the vascular cylinder that continues to divide and is the starting point where branch or lateral roots develop, like this one here in the photo. So this is the branch of the root. So here this part are mitotically active. Okay, so that was eudicots. So now we go on into monocots roots. So in monocots, the ground tissue of the root pit is surrounded by a vascular ring. So they have the same growth zone as the eudicot roots, but do not undergo a secondary growth. They still have the pericycle, they have the endodermis, they have the cortex, and also the outer layer, which is the epidermis. So roots tend to be of two varieties. And so in eudicots, the primary growth grows straight down and is called a taproot, while in monocots they have a fibrous root system. So we can see here there is a four photos which all have different specialized roots. based on their functions and also their adaptation. So in the first photo, we have the potatoes. So the roots are enlarged and store large quantities of starch. So it's usually used for storage. And then the second one, we have the prop roots, which is mainly used for support. And then we have the pneumatophores, which is near mangrove area. Their roots are usually for oxygen acquisition. And the last one, we have the multifunctional area roots, usually hanging up in the air. Okay, so the next subtopic will be 24.4, which is organization and diversity of stems. So a stem carries leaves and flowers and supports the plant weight. So a stiff stem rising upward against gravity is an ancient adaptation that allowed plants to move into terrestrial habitat. So let's have a look at the anatomy of a woody twig here. So the terminal bud here contains the shoot tip, which is protected by the bud scales. So in each spring season, the bud scales drop and it leaves a scar. So each scar is 1 year of growth. So leaf scars here and bundle of scars mark the location of leaves that have been dropped. There is also a dormant axillary bud that will give rise to branches or flowers which can be found in the twig as well. So as the seasonal growth resumes, the apical meristem at the shoot tip produces new cells, which increases the height of the stem. So it becomes longer. So the shoot apical meristem is protected within the terminal bud, where leaf primordia, also known as immature leaves, envelops it. So the leaf primordia mark the location of nodes, which is the portion of stem in between the nodes is an internode. Okay, here, this is the node, and between the two nodes, you have the internode. So as the stem grows, the internodes increases in length. So in addition to leaf primordia, the three specialized types of primary meristem develop from a shoot apical meristem. So this primary meristem contribute to the length of a shoot. So we have the protoderm. Protoderm, which is the outermost primary meristem, which gives rise to the epidermis. And then we have the ground meristem, which produces two tissues composed of parenchyma cells, the pith and the cortex. So lastly, we have the procambium, which produces the first xylem cells called the primary xylem and the first phloem cells called the primary phloem. And mature vascular bundles contain vascular cambium. Okay, so here is a photo of a shoot tip and primary meristem. So the shoot apical meristem within a terminal bud is surrounded by the leaf primordia. So the shoot apical meristem produces the primary meristem. Okay, so the protoderm, this part here, the protoderm gives rise to the epidermis. And then the ground meristem, which is the yellow part here, it gives rise to the pith and the cortex. While the procambium, which is the orange part here, it will give rise to the primary xylem, to the primary phloem, and also the vascular cambium. Herbaceous stems are mature non-woody stems that exhibit only primary growth. So the outermost tissue of the herbaceous stem is the epidermis, which is covered by a waxy cuticle to prevent water loss. So these stems have distinctive vascular bundles where xylem and phloem are found. So in each bundle, xylem is typically found inside towards the inside of the stem, and the phloem is found towards the outside. So in the herbaceous eudicote stem, such as the sunflower, the vascular bundles are arranged in a distinct ring, where the cortex, you see here, the cortex are separated from the centropith. So this centropith stores water and products of photosynthesis. The cortex is sometimes green and carries on the photosynthesis. So in a monocot stem, which is down here, you can see, for example, in the corn. So the vascular bundles are scattered throughout the stem, and often the cortex and the pith are not clearly distinguishable. So woody stems. So woody plants have both primary and secondary tissues. So primary tissues form each year from primary meristem, and the secondary tissues develop during first and subsequent years from lateral meristem. So woody stems have both the primary and secondary growth. So primary growth increases the length of the plant, while the secondary growth increases the girth or the waist of the plant. So woody stems have no vascular tissue. Instead, they have three distinct regions, which is the bark, and then the wood, and then the outmost inside, we call it the pith. So the secondary growth of stems in a herbaceous eudicote follows a pattern of development whereby the secondary phloem will be active within that year and secondary xylem becomes the annual ring. So this is the annual ring, the secondary xylem. So if we can see here from the young plant, they have the vascular cambium and the periderm. So this is when they get older and older. So if you can see here, they have the pith, and then they have the primary xylem, they have the secondary xylem, which becomes the annual ring, and then they have the vascular cambium, they have the secondary phloem, the primary phloem, and then they have the cork or the lenticel, which is the periderm. So this periderm, as the stem becomes woody, and the epidermis is replaced by the periderm. So the periderm will then become the bark, because the bark includes the periderm and the living secondary phloem. So it gets thicker over the years. So wood, it increases each year, which includes the annual ring of the xylem. So wood is a secondary xylem that builds up year after year. The vascular cambium is dormant during winter. So the annual ring is made up of spring wood and also the summer wood. The summer wood has a lower proportion of vessels than the spring wood. So in older trees, the inner annual ring, called the hardwood, no longer function in the transport of the water. So build-up of secondary xylem in a woody stem results in annual ring. Okay, rings can be distinguished. Each one begins with the spring wood, which are the large vessel elements, and then it ends up with the summer wood, which is the smaller and fewer vessel elements. So the ring shows the age of the stem. Okay, so this is the spring wood. See here, they have large vessel elements, and then this is the summer wood, which is the smaller and fewer vessel elements. So this is called the annual ring. Okay. So this is a cross section of a 39-year-old larch, which shows the xylem within the darker hardwood, which is when it gets darker, it's actually inactive. So the xylem within the lighter sapwood is active. So the relationship of bark, the vascular cambium and the wood is retained in a mature stem. So the pith has been buried by the growth of layers after layers of new secondary xylem. So if we count the number of annual rings, we will know what is the age of that tree. So there are many plants whose ground level or below ground stems are often mistaken for roots. So the first one here, this photo shows the stem diversity. So in the first photo, we have the stolon, which is horizontal stem. Okay, or actually another word for it are runners, which produce new plants where the nodes touch the ground. So an example here are the strawberry plant, with this common example of this type of stem. And then the next one, we have the rhizome, which is a underground horizontal stem. They may be long and thin or thick and fleshy as in iris. So rhizomes survive the winter and contribute to asexual reproduction because each node bears a bud. So some rhizomes have enlarged portions called tubers, which function in food storage. So potatoes are tubers and the potato eyes are buds that mark the node. Okay. So lastly, we have the corm, which are bulbous. Okay, so an example of these are onions. This part here are bulb. Okay, so we go on into the final subtopic, which is the organization and diversity of leaves. So leaves are the part of a plant that generally carries on the majority of photosynthesis, which is a process that requires water, carbon dioxide, and sunlight. So leaves receive water from the root system by way of the stem. So this figure shows a cross-section of a typical udicot leaf of a temperate zone plant. So at the top and the bottom layer are the epidermal tissue that often bears the trichome, which is a protective hairs often modified as glands that secrete irritating substances. So these features help deter the insect from eating the leaf. So the epidermis characteristic has an outer waxy cuticle, which is this part here, the green part is waxy cuticle, that helps keep the leaf from drying out, and the cuticle also prevents the gas exchange because it is not gas permeable. So however, the lower part of the epidermis of udicot and both surfaces of the monocot leaves contain the stomata that allows gases to move into and out of the leaf. So water loss also occurs at the stomata, but each stoma has two guard cells that regulate its opening and closing, and the stomata close when the weather is hot and dry. So the body of a leaf is composed of mesophyll. They have two, which is palisade mesophyll and also the spongy mesophyll. They are very different from one another if you can see the structure. So the palisade mesophyll contain tightly packed elongated cells, and the spongy mesophyll contain irregular cells bounded by air spaces. So there are important reasons why the palisade mesophylls and the spongy mesophylls look so different from each other. So the long cylindrical cells of the palisade mesophylls are closely together and packed with chloroplasts. See here, they are packed with chloroplasts and are most responsible for photosynthesis. So although they are close together, the palisade cells are separated from each other by a tiny film of water, which increases the surface area for slow-moving carbon dioxide molecules to diffuse into. While the spongy mesophyll is made up of cells that are loosely packed, irregularly shaped, and have a higher volume of air spaces. So this structure increases the chance that carbon dioxide, which does not dissolve easily, will enter the leaf and stay there long enough to diffuse into the palisade layer. Okay, next we go on into the classification of leaves. So the blade of a leaf can be simple or compound. So this is an example of a simple leaf, and these are example of compound leaf. So this is pinnately compound and this is palmately compound. So this pinnately compound leaflets, they occur in pairs. You see here, they are symmetrical. Well, not exactly symmetrical, sorry. They are opposite. They occur in pairs. And the bulki has a palmately compound leaf with all the leaves attached to a single point. See, all 5 leaves are attached to a single point. So this is palmate, and this is pinnate, and this is simple. These two are compound. Okay. And leaves also can be arranged on a stem in 3 ways, which is alternate, opposite, or whorled. It is alternate, if you can see that. It's alternate, one after the other, one branch here, one branch there, and then the opposite branching from the same axillary part, and a whorled, which is like a circle. It's like it's surrounding like in a ring. Okay. So here are a few examples of the leaf diversity. So the first picture is the spine of a cactus plant. There's modified leaves that protect the fleshy stem from animal predation. And then we have the tendrils of a cucumber. These are modified leaves that attach the plant for support, for its physical support. And then lastly, we have the modified leaves of a Venus flytrap, which serves as a trap for insect prey. So when triggered by an insect, the leaf snaps shut. Okay, so once it's shut, the leaf secretes the digestive juices, which breaks down the soft parts of the insect's body. So these are leaves, and these are also leaves, and that's also leaf. Okay, so that is all for our lecture on plant evolution, plant structure and organization. Thank you.